Welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. This session is about debugging techniques. I'm Wendy Baltodano. My pronouns are she, here. I go by Baltowen online. I work as a Drupal developer at Entech. And this is my first DrupalCon, the first session in Vienna. And I'm glad to share this session with Mauricio Dinarte. His pronouns are he and him. He goes by dinarcon online, and he's a senior software engineer at Agaric, and also he's an expert on migration. And his first session at DrupalCon was also here in Vienna. A fun coincidence. We are from Nicaragua, a beautiful tropical country, and known as the land of lake and volcanoes. As I mentioned, we work at Agaric and Entech. Both are Drupal agencies based in the US, and also they have offices in Nicaragua and in Germany. And Mauricio is passionate about teaching, so he has a personal blog, understanddrupal.com. There are a lot of resources about Drupal in different languages, English, Spanish, and French. And you can check out the blog. So let's get started. Why should we learn debugging techniques? Let me ask you a question. Is it possible to have zero bugs code? No? Yes, it is. It's possible. If you not write code at all. So it's possible. And we debug code for one, to fix issues. This is the most common reason. And second, to understand how the application works. This is an important technique because if you are introducing a project that you don't know too much about it, by using debuggers and knowing the techniques that we are going to cover today, you can have a sense of what is the issue and how to fix them. And I would like you to remember this phrase by Leah Baroque that said, understanding the process of finding a solution is far more valuable than the solution itself. This is the objective of this presentation. It's not to give you a set of steps to follow up in all kind of the errors. But instead is give you some tools and strategies that you can use to fix issues. So in order to be effective at debugging, you need to start with a solid foundation. You need to consider the technology stacks. So we need to know about the languages, if we are using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, the framework that we are using, Drupal, WordPress, or React, the infrastructure that we are also working with, web servers, database servers, caching, CDNs, and also consumers, browsers, mobile application, external web services. And it might be you be thinking that you don't need. Why do you need to know all of these things if you use only one? If you only needed to fix the bug? Because the more you know, the more the context you can fix that issues. And let me give an example. This is a real example in my daily life. I was tasked with an issue that said image not loading, and To start working on this, first I need to check if the image tag was presented on the HTML markup, and also I ask a lot of questions in order to determine what was the issue. If the problem was part of the framework, is Drupal rendering the media field? Or if this is a problem of infrastructure, is the storage service Amazon S3 properly configured? Or this is something related to consumers? Is there a browser extension blocking the request? And let me say that was none of these questions. The real issue here was that someone had added an external link of the image for an external server, and in any moment or in any point the image link was removed. That's why the images didn't appear on the site. And Drupal empowers you. If you start as a site builder, if you evolve to a developer, also learn from the community and expand your knowledge beyond Drupal. Learning more about Git, Composer, and some tools that are necessary in this field. Developers need to learn the language syntax, control structures, logic operators, the API of the framework, and we also need to level up our skills. Learning about version control, debugging techniques like the session today, database management, testing, API integration, security, and performance. And let me talk about debugging in Drupal. We need to know what things we need to know about Drupal. We need to know about site building concepts, nodes, users, views, blocks, theme regions, about the core APIs, fields, entity, forms, database, extension points, about hooks, events, plugins, and services. And we also know about the ecosystem, if this is something related to core or contrib, or this is custom modules of things. And let me get focused on site building concepts, because Drupal sites are like an onions, and if you saw the movie, you know that onions are like layers. And one quick example here is that if you have a Drupal site and you have the sidebar, for example, and you are rendering the most recent articles, you have the title, and you also have the teaser, or like the summary. Those are fields, and these fields belongs to node, and these nodes also are part of the view. And this view also we can have a blog to display, and this blog also can be rendered in whatever part of the site, in the region, in the theme region. And to swap also this example, we also can have the users instead of nodes. We can have, for example, the username. We can have the username, and we also can have the profile picture, and these follow the same example as this, related to layers in Drupal.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to talk about some strategies. And just for the record, at the end there will be a link to a repository with a fully configured dev environment that you can follow along what we will be doing as part of the demo. But for now, on tools and strategies, first strategies, you need to prepare. Before finding an issue, hopefully you have some prior experience, in particular with debugging tools, and we're going to talk about them in a moment. having a proper IDE, having a proper debugger, profiling tools, and so on. But again, like you don't want to just find an issue and do not know what to do or do not have any tools available. So first, prepare with your tools. Then you need to analyze the problem to understand the scope. Wendy was talking about different layers and different elements that can be involved in a problem. Is this about the language itself? Is this a specific Drupal problem? Is this about infrastructure? Is this about something else outside of my control, like in a local environment? So you need to be able to at least get an idea of where the problem might be. Then, and this is very important, you need to be able to reproduce the issue. Hopefully in a local environment, like sometimes people report something in production, this is not working, but are you able to reproduce that locally? And if so, how? You need to give steps. Then you need to simplify the issue to eliminate variables with the objective to reduce the scope. Something that I normally do, if I have a Drupal site with 100 modules, and this has never happened, of course, something broke, and I don't know where. At least I get an idea of where things could go wrong. I start, getting suspicious about a specific module. So sometimes I'm going to install a fresh Drupal site, a clean Drupal site with just Drupal core, and only that module, and try to replicate the issue there. If I am able to replicate it there, it means that I have pinpoint at least, out of 100 modules, the one that is giving me the error, and I can focus on that specific area. Once you simplify the problem, you divide it, which means, break it down. There is a phrase in development that we say, divide and conquer, and that's what we want to do. Let's say a module has different routes. Which of the routes is causing the issue, or which of the services, or which of the plugins? Like, you need to get an idea, or sometimes guessing, to be honest, but most of the time, with the tools that we're going to see and with the techniques that we're going to see in a moment, you will be able to at least get a sense of the code path that gets executed up to the point where the errors occurs. So after you divide the problem, you solve it with the debugging techniques that we're going to cover. And very important, you document it, because inevitably you're going to encounter this problem again sometime in the future, very likely, and you want to save yourself some time. And in this last point, I want to share an anecdote from probably 2 weeks ago. As Wendy said, I work a lot on migrations and very big migration projects. There is one project in particular that, to run a full migration, we spent at least 3 days. And there was one specific field that was not working. And we didn't want to wait 3 days in order to debug this. So, we started following this approach, and it went like this. It was a migration problem. We had a Drupal 7 database and a Drupal 11 database. Okay, is this a database problem? Then we started checking the migrations, and the migrations seemed to be okay. Then we started looking at the PHP code, and the PHP code seemed to be okay as well. In the end, we were able to trace the issue to a contributed module, not related at all with the migration. What's happening is that we were deduplicating files on the fly, and we were using the file name to match, to know if something had already been migrated or not. And we noticed that there was an extra space in all of the cases where things weren't working. And the reason was we were migrating files in Drupal 7 into media entity in Drupal 11, so we were doing conversions of entity types. On top of that, we were generating the file name, the media name on the fly with automatic entity aliases. And that module has a line of code which makes a lot of sense to remove extra or double or triple white spaces. But that part was breaking or complete logic about how to dedupe files. So once we figured out the problem, which again was not related to the migration, but probably wrong assumptions about how this other module worked, we were able to patch our migration process and solve the issue. But again, why I am mentioning this as part of documenting the problem? Because when I wrote that specific migration for media, I left a handy comment saying the file name is overridden by the entity label module. So that gave me the clue to know where to look at later on. Like we spent a good amount of time trying to reproduce the error because there were so many variables, and that single comment saved us a lot of time in the end. So again, like documented in code, in the issue, in the release notes, documented somewhere, because at some point you can be hit by that in the future. Now, in terms of tools, IDEs, it might be obvious, but even some of the things that we can cover, that we're going to cover today, IDEs give you syntax highlighting, linters, a lot of things that are, nowadays you give for granted. They will just give you a big warning if something is completely off. So have your IDEs properly configured. Debuggers, Xdebug is my tools of choice, and paired with ddeb, as we're going to see in the demo, it's very easy to set up, and you get a lot of information about that, about problems. You can have profilers. This is useful when you have performance issues. XHProf is a common one. There is another called SPX. But again, it is not about which tool you use. It is about having the proper tools to do the job, the debugging, the researching. Then version control. And why do we talk about version control as a tool for debugging? Again, this is part of the examples, but Drupal, you know that it uses YAML files for a lot of things. And if you have been a long-time Drupal developer, you probably know by heart that the extension of YAML file is .yml. But other communities, not necessarily Drupal, might use a different extension for the same type of files. I remember once debugging a problem, everything looked good. And after doing a git status and seeing that the file name was wrong, I realized, okay, this is just a file extension that is causing the whole problem. So again, version control is yet another tool, looking at the file system is yet another tool that you can use to debug problems. Database browsers, I will be saying this over and over. I work a lot with migrations, and I need to understand the data, the content model, the structure at the database level to be able to understand how to translate how things work in Drupal 7 to how things work in Drupal 11. So for me, a database browser, whether it is using a CLI or a GUI, it is indispensable for my day-to-day job. Loggers and observability. So this can be as easy as a printf statement. You can have show a Drupal status on the page. You can have something more fancy like new relic or just like dblog or syslog. You need to have information so that you are able to trace back the problem. Digital journal, again, probably getting a little bit off school, showing my age here, but just being able to take notes either on paper or in my case, I just have a plain text file in which I start dumping ideas of what could go wrong, what could be the issue. That helps me a lot in trying to understand and debug the problem. And a watch. And this might seem weird, but why do we want to watch? Because we need to know when to take a break. Debugging can take hours or days. And my usually rule is spend up to 2 hours trying to solve an issue. And if you cannot do that in 2 hours, and maybe that is too much already, take a pause, talk to someone, talk to your rubber duck on the table, ask ChatGPT about what could be the issue, but do not just keep going, because you get stuck, you get frustrated, and you stop making progress. So again, some of the tools are technical, and so some of them are just about how you work, and everybody works differently, but know yourself and how you work best, and in the state of mind that you have to be more effective with this type of challenges. Oh, okay. Someone told me that there were issues with the projector. Oh no. Oh no. We got a bug. We got a bug right in the middle of the session. Okay, well, as you can see, we have a full party, so don't panic. Don't panic. We will be able to make it. So, when something happens, something unexpected happens like this, totally unexpected. Every bug have a cause. Computers are deterministic. Things do not happen just randomly. So it is very likely that you will be able to find a solution. If, and this is not always true, but if you have an error message, please read it carefully. Time and again, I have seen people, because I give support in Slack, asking for something, and the answer is in the same message that they paste. They get a link to a documentation page that gives them exactly the steps that they need to follow to solve the issue, but they didn't take the time to read it. So even though it seems simple and obvious, please read the message and read it completely. Another thing, make a list of what you think could be the issue. Again, I have worked on projects in which I start with an idea, this is database related, and in the end, it is not. It is a module, or it is PHP, or it is, caching, or it is something completely different. But that's why having a journal is useful. You jot down ideas, you start, thinking about different options, and you explore them one at a time. Then, this is super important. Before making any change, form a hypothesis. Do not do something hoping for the best. Like, if I'm going to change this line of code, what is my expectation? And why I am doing this? You make the change, and then you verify your hypothesis. If it didn't work, go back. You don't want to be changing many things at the same time, because if you do so, you will not know what was the line of code or the specific action that you took that actually solved the issue. So one thing at a time. If you are changing code, and it is not always code, Wendy just described an issue in which it was about content. The content editors hot link to an external site, and that is not code that we control. That is something that was stored at a database, and it was kind of hard to track, to be honest. But point being, if you are changing code, one change at a time, and commit every step along the way. Making I like making commits. Like the other day, I sent a pull request with 154 commits, because I like to be very detailed. And this is for my future self. If I include 100 changes in one commit and something goes wrong, rolling back, reverting that change is going to blow up the whole thing. But if I am very specific, this is doing this, this is doing that, I can individually revert commits, and in the end, yes, the pull request can have 100 plus commits, but you can squash them when you merge, and it is just a simple commit. But for people reviewing the change, it is also easier, because in every commit, it's going to be a handful of line of codes and a handful of files, and it is just a better process for everyone, but to be honest, for yourself. And as I said before, talk to friends, talk to a rubber dog, talk to ChatGPT or Cloud Code or something like that. Do not try, do not go in the wild alone. You need to go with your friendly Pokemons and friendly other people that can help you along the way. So let's focus a little bit on some practical debugging techniques. These are screenshots. I'm going to actually demo these later, but just to mention it, use a step debugger for PHP. On the bottom right, you have the option to see and explore all the variables that are available at this point in the debugging process. On the bottom left, you can see all the stack trace, all the functions that led you to this point in the code execution. The breakpoint, which is the red dot, you can actually make it conditional, so that it only hits when specific conditions are met, like when you're looking for a specific value. And again, this is useful when you're migrating thousands of records, and the specific ID causing the problem. You don't want to stop in every record. You don't want to stop in that particular node, for example. And you also have the option to evaluate code on the fly. So again, this is going to be demoed later. But one very nice thing about using a proper debugger, which is the right tool for the job, is that you can not only debug PHP, but also Twig. So you can set breakpoints on Twig files. And similarly, you will be able to see the variables that are available, objects that are available, and you can call methods on those objects. And this is another way to debug Twig. Just a little bit about this. This is something that works out of the box with PHP Storm, but if you have a different idea of choice, let's say VS Code, there are two modules that you can use. One is Devel and one is called Twig debug. That is going to give you a statement, like a line that you add to your Twig file, and that will work across every IDE. But if you are using PHP Storm, it is something that is available out of the box. Point being, the same way that you debug PHP, the same way that you debug Twig, which ultimately Twig gets compiled to PHP, but that is a little bit back of the story, but it's also an option. Speaking of Twig, if you're a themer, you might want to debug templates. So, Wendy mentioned, like, Drupal sites are built one layer on top of another. So you have the region template, inside of that you have the block template, inside of that you have the view template and the node template and the field template, and there are so many templates. I used to do counts before, and last time it was like Drupal core had in one of the base themes like 180 template files. So it's a lot. You don't want to be manually checking 180 files. So if you enable the Twig debugging, you can specifically and directly go to the one file that is responsible for producing the markup that you are looking in the screen. Now, what you see here is the browser tools with the comments. And speaking of that, learn to use your browser tools. This is particularly useful for debugging JavaScript. Like, you can basically step debug directly in your browser, but do not ignore the rest of the tabs. I have used this to debug performance. I have used this to debug networking issues, like what Wendy was saying. Everything else looks right, but the image still doesn't load. Like, if you go to the network tab, you look at the URL not being loaded, you click on it, and then you realize that something is not wrong with the source of the image, and then, okay, yeah, it is not there anymore. The console tab is going to give you like JavaScript errors and such. So by all means, get familiar with the developers tools that come included in your browser. Logging. Again, logging can take many shapes and forms. In this example, I am setting a status message that I can see in the Drupal UI, but this can be something as a printf or a bar DOM or something like that. In general, you want to have a way to log something and after the fact be able to read it, whether that goes to the database with dblog or to the syslog with the syslog module or with something else. Point being, again, this is yet another technique. Something that I do more often that I would like to admit is blow up everything temporarily. Drupal is a complex application. Like, it is built on top of Symfony and a lot of other projects. And sometimes you don't know what to do. Like, you are out of ideas, and how do I know if this code execution path is actually being hit? So I just put a bomb, explode everything for 1 second, verify that I actually hit the execution point, and then I remove that line, and I at least got confirmation that I am on the right track to solve the issue. At least I am in the proper execution path. One thing about die, Drupal tries to save you from dying, and many times you need to clear the cache for die to actually take effect. But after 1 or maybe 2 cache reveals, usually you will see the bomb if you actually are in that execution path. And another thing, search for the whole code base. When you get an error message, one of the very first things that I do is I copy the error message and try to look for it in the code base. In this case, I am using my IDE, but you can use grep like in the console. The one thing to remember is that many times error messages have placeholders, so you might not be able to find exact match, but I start removing some strings, and then I find partial matches that are useful. In this case, I was getting a validation constraints error, and what I found was actually very useful. This string only appears twice in the whole of Drupal core. One in code that gets executed while the application is running, and the second one in a test. So I know for a fact what is the execution path that is getting followed. But do not neglect the benefit of taking a look at the test. The test coverage in Drupal core is very helpful. It has a lot of examples. It has a lot of comments. I remember the other day I was trying to debug a problem with form states API in hierarchical taxonomy vocabulary, and it was very messy. And the solution and the example that I needed was in a Drupal test. So by looking at the test, I was able to figure out the solution to my problem. Again, like I am saying a lot of things, search the code base, look for tests, but ultimately debugging is not a straight path. You need to have some instinct, you need to have several tools that you can leverage as needed, and put them to good use when things go wrong. And similar to searching the whole code base, you can also search the whole file system. In this case, I was looking for recipes, and yes, I could use my IDE, but something more useful was using my terminal, the find command to look all the recipes in Drupal core. I strip out anything that is a feature because that is a test recipe, and then I sort alphabetically. So this gave me an idea of what things I got available when working with recipes. And as you can see, like we go from the very technical to the crazy stuff to something more like manual, if you will. But in the end, all of these are tools at your disposal to be able to trace problems. And you won't be using everything all the time, but at least knowing that they exist will give you an idea of what you can do along the way. So the last one that I want to share is inspect the database. In this case, it is useful if you know the database structure of Drupal. So I can give you an example. Every field in Drupal 11 creates two database tables, one for the primary, like the current data, and one for revisions. The name of the table is for nodes, node __ the machine name of the field, that is for the current version, node _ revision _ fielding, the machine name of the field for all the history. And it comes with a specific table structure. So looking at this helps me understand how things work in Drupal 11. And if you were to look at something similar in Drupal 7, the naming convention is different, the columns might be different, and ultimately we are doing transformation from one system to another. You need to understand how things are wired under the hood. So with all of that, we already got a bug. Now we're going to do a live demo. Let's see how it goes. By the way, that's the link. And again, two things I want to point out. One, everything that we're doing is already available. At the end, we're going to share links to the slide deck and the repo and everything. But two, Drupal is always evolving. We saw yesterday a lot of innovation that there is now. But point being, we have had over time changed this repository because some of the bugs we found had already been fixed. So what I show today might not be working in the future, or something got fixed. But anyways, we try to keep this up to date with real examples that you can use to actually test your skills. So with all of that, I am going to change to my browser. 1 second. So this is my very complicated Drupal site. I have one content type, I have 2 nodes, and these nodes were created using a migration, because migrations are very fun to me. And if I look at one of the nodes, I have a title and I have a link. Great. If I look at the other node, I have a title, but the link is empty. So my migration didn't work. So let's start like debugging. If it is a migration, the first thing to look at is the migration file itself. So what things to consider? 1 second. Of course, it's hard. Okay. Is this big enough?
Yes.
There is a
Okay.
presentation of
Yeah. There used to be a shortcut, but it doesn't seem to be working in the debugging session, of course. Well, we'll go with this. So, few things to check. My migration is being detected. I can verify by doing a ddeb drosh ms resources. And yes, the migration is being detected. 2, and I'm able to execute it. Yes, because I already got some data, and I can prove that I am not cheating by rolling back the migration. And if I refresh my page, the items are not there. So for one, my migration is being detected. It is possible to execute it. By doing this, I already discarded a problem with the file extension. I can look at the code, at the file itself. This is a very simple migration, but I have an ID, a title, and the link that I want to show. Anybody knows what the problem is? Okay. Okay, well, 4 people know about it, but just for the sake of the example, we're going to pretend that we don't know. So, first thing that I want to demo is using a debugger. And again, the debugger is the tool. You need to know how to use the tool, and in particular with a debugger, you need to know where to place the breakpoint. And this comes with trial and error, this comes with experience, it comes with coming to sessions like this. But point being, if you go to migrate executable and you look for import, you place a breakpoint here, and in xdebug, in PHP Storm, this is how you enable the debugger. Then, one second, you say ddeb xdebug on, and that's all that you need. One command to enable debugging within ddeb, and one click in the IDE to say that you want to debug. So now I can run my migration with the debug flag. The debug flag is necessary if you are using drosh 13 or later. If you are using drosh 12 or before, there is no debug flag, you don't need to use it. But starting with drosh 13, you need to be explicit when you want to enable debugging features when running drosh commands. So when I do this, I hit a breakpoint. And again, like, why do I see here? This is my complete call stack. I can see all the variables that are available. In this case, I know there is a row variable with a source array, and this contains the information that I am hoping to import. I said before that you can evaluate code. So if, let's say, it's a row here, and then you can, any code, get, source, property, check, unique ID, and you get the value. Point being, what do you have here? You have, you can execute, evaluate code, you can see all the variables that are available, you can see your call stack, and the breakpoint, if you right click on it, you can make it conditional. So for example, I can say, I only want to hit this breakpoint when this value is the specific number that I am interested in debugging. So that is how you make it conditional. If I let it run, again, like this time, it hit the breakpoint because the condition evaluated to true. If I execute this again, I am in node 10,002, and that's why I was able to hit it. If not, like if I were to roll back and import again, instead of hitting the breakpoint twice, I will only do it once. Okay, all of this is to get a sense of the debugger. And the debugger has the proper data. If I look at this, like Drupal is being able to read the data. Now, what else could go wrong? Maybe something in the database, like the migration thinks it is working, but it is actually not storing it in the database. So this is where the explorer comes handy. So I'm using PHP myadmin for the sake of it. This is a way to review your database. And remember, what is the pattern? Node _ and then the machine name of the field. So in this case, field name. And I see that my data is at the database, in the database too, like both of them are there. yet something is not working as expected. So I discarded a second problem. It is not about the database. Now, what field type is this? If I go to the content type, it is of type link. And in Drupal core, there is a pattern that the class that defines a field, it is like the name of the field type plus item. So if I look for link item, this is the class that defines that specific field. And again, like, how do I know that I am on the right track? Let's see the methods that are available. I am going to check this get URL, maybe, I don't know, die. Pom. Exactly.
Why not a breakpoint?
We will. This is just like part of the exercise, but we will put a breakpoint. At first, I just want to know if at least I am on the right track. And if I am on the right track, then I can put a breakpoint and start looking deeper into the problem. So I come here and come to the content, Drupal.org, boom. So yes, I am on the right track. No need to clear cache this time. If I remove it and I refresh, okay, now we follow the recommendation. We put a breakpoint, so like one step at a time. I put a breakpoint and I figured out that my breakpoint is not being hit. And this is where I said before, sometimes Drupal is too good and it caches stuff, so you need to clear the cache for this to take effect. So I'm going to clear the cache, ddrosh.cr, I hide this, and I hit the breakpoint now. At least I know I am in the right place. So let's inspect what we have available. URI, I see something. But if I try to execute the whole thing myself, I get an error. And this is what people who raised their hands knew about. URI something is invalid. You must use a valid URI scheme. So this is enough to give me a clue of what might be wrong. If we look again at the migration file, these two are not the same. This one has the HTTPS at the beginning, this one does not. So how do I solve the problem? I put the protocol, and to be fair, that message is not that helpful to determine this, but bear with me. We're going to do this in a bit. I'm going to add it here, and before rolling the migration again, I want to point out something else. If I click edit, I can see that there is data, and if I click save, I get a similar error at the beginning here. You know, something should start with these characters, and again, like sometimes error messages are kind of cryptic. They might not be always helpful, but just by making some guesses, things are looking like promising. So I'm going to remove my breakpoint, and I'm going to roll back the migration. I'm going to clear the cache, because if you change the YAML file, you need to clear the cache for changes to be detected. And I run the migration again, this time without the xdebug flag. So it is just going to run. And I come back to content, and I go to this and to this. And my link is there, and my link is there. So again, like, yes, Drupal 11 is more zealous with how you enter links, and you need to provide the schema. In this case, the HTTPS was missing, and that was breaking the whole thing. And as you saw, the migration was working at the database level. Things were there. The problem ended up being how the validation logic for rendering the link item ended up working. Just for your own homework, there are other exercises, like you can go to this repository, clone it, and there are the explanation of what is wrong. And if you want to cheat, you can also click the solutions, and it's going to tell you the solutions. I'm not going to show them here for you to try at home. But this repository has been evolving over time to have different examples that you can use to practice your debugging skills. And with that, the demo didn't go that bad, thankfully. So I just want to Wendy shared a beautiful quote by Leah Burrow, so I'm going to share one too. A great way to learn something is finding a working example and breaking it on purpose. And if you haven't heard this before, it's because I just made it up right now, on the spot. But in all seriousness, this is how I learn. Like, I look for something that works. I start breaking things, like changing in the YAML file. Change the file extension, it breaks. If you get familiar with the type of errors that you get, the next time that you see them, it's going to take you less time to debug the problem. In one of the examples, the solution is you didn't indent the YAML file properly. Another example, the file extension is different. Another example, you are missing a semicolon. It's like, if you find something that works and you start breaking it on purpose, get used to the errors that get generated. The next time that you encounter something in the wild, in the real life, in a production website, you are going to be better equipped to solve those problems. And the other thing that I want to mention is, let's debug all the things. Thank you very much to Randy Fay. He's a proficient developer, but more than that, an amazing human being. We worked together on a similar session, and many of the things that we showed today actually was collaboration with him. And he's actually the lead maintainer of DDEV, which saved me hours of time. So thank you for that. And I also want to invite you to the mentoring. This is happening all week long, but especially on Friday, if you will be here, by all means come. And, something I didn't say, but another way to learn is by teaching. And in mentoring, we're going to teach you not only debugging techniques, but also how to get involved in Drupal, how to learn from the community. And, it is a great learning experience from learning from others. Yeah, thank you very much. The slides are available, and the game is available. I think we are right on time, but if there are questions, we're happy to stay a little bit longer to answer them. Yes.
I have one comment, a tool that I also use. Thanks. Yeah, so I have more of a comment. So one tool that I like to use for debugging as well is the Drush PHP
yes.
shell. So that's also very helpful.
Yes, that actually reminds me, just for the recording, the Drush PHP eval gives you a Drupal CLI where you can actually, like, directly from there call services, load entities, and all of that. So if you have not looked at that before, in the Drush documentation, look for PHP eval, and they have examples how to load nodes and call services, and yeah, that's another very useful way to debug. Thank you for sharing. Any other comment or question? Yes?
I think you never need it, but
What do you do with a 3 kilometer long backtrace error?
Okay, what do I do with a 3 kilometer backtrace? To be honest, those are a little bit harder to figure out, and not because they are long, but because Drupal, the execution path sometimes takes some detours that are crazy. What I start doing is, like, I put a breakpoint, start looking back, and if 5 levels before I don't find something useful, I try a different technique. Sometimes I try to look for the error, like copy the copy of the error, and look for that instead of using directly the debugger, and that that's an option. In the end, there is no one technique that will solve all the issues, but if you are able to combine them, you get there. But in the case of crazy stack trace, I basically give up with that approach, 5 levels deep, and after that I try something different.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anything else? I guess we're good. Thank you very much.